Yeah, that was an experience. What's going on, everyone? James here with another real review for one of my most anticipated movies of the year, Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I got a chance to see it early in IMAX for review, and it's all thanks to Disney and Marvel Studios. So when you get the chance to see it this weekend on Friday in theaters, let me know down below in the comments what you guys have to say about it, because I definitely have a lot to say, both good things and some negatives. If you missed it, I dropped my out of theater reaction yesterday, which gave you my initial thoughts, but today we're going to sit down and talk more about this film and why I think it's one of the stronger Marvel movies and also just overall films of the year. But before we get into it, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I absolutely love talking about movies, TV, and all the news in between. So if you do too, hit the big red button below and subscribe to the channel. Y'all, we're almost at 13,000, and well, it's all because of you. And go ahead and hit the thumbs up button again if you are a big fan of Black Panther and of course are excited to see Wakanda Forever, because like I said, man, there's a lot to get excited about when it comes to this movie. If you don't know much about it though, it is directed once again by director Ryan Coogler, who also directed Black Panther and is known for Creed, Fruitvale Station, and so much more. And then the film stars an ensemble cast led by Letitia, Wright as Shuri, Lupita, Nyong'o, you have Tenoch, Huerta, Winston, Duke, Angela Bassett, and even Danai, Gurira. There's a lot of actors here that we'll definitely talk about, and we'll get into why maybe there's almost too many, but that's a conversation for maybe another minute or two. Now guys, the film itself, I'm not going to spoil anything. Again, spoiler-free review. So the premise of the film is, of course, the nation of Wakanda is pitted against big world powers and a new world power in their quest for vibranium. Now, Wakanda's also mourning the loss of their king, T'Challa, which this film definitely addresses, and we'll talk about if it does it very well. So let's take this time now to transition into my positives, because I'm going to start on a optimistic note here, and we'll begin with the vision by director Ryan Coogler. To me, he needed to do two things very well for this sequel to be great, and I believe he did that. One, paying tribute to Chadwick Boseman and handle the passing of his mantle in a graceful way. Now, the film addresses this moment very quickly. I mean, the cold open intro for this movie is just incredibly powerful, and then you get the Marvel Studios logo without the typical fanfare, so the music we're used to hearing is not present, and I like that because it allows you to linger, even though some people in our theater started clapping, and I thought, oh, don't break the moment. But I really did enjoy how they addressed it, and it was nice to see, of course, the movie through the eyes of the people of Wakanda, where they were revering him. They were essentially treating this as like a homegoing ceremony, because like T'Challa said, people of Wakanda believe that life does not stop at death. Although it was interesting to see how they allowed Shuri to feel these emotions, so that allowed, of course, Letitia Wright to put her full acting range on display. So there was a really nice balance and mix in this moment. But the second thing Ryan Coogler had to do really well was also flesh out this world and introduce a brand new one. And yes, I'm talking about Namor and the people of Talokan. Oh my goodness gracious, you guys. I was blown away because, man, on paper, it sounds like this is gonna be a tough task and it might make the film bloated, but instead it seamlessly fit into the story. And what I love so much is that Ryan Coogler always pours in a very authentic, genuine style of filmmaking where it captures the human element versus just catering to a formula. However, the MCU formula was present every now and then, but for me, he was able to strip that away for most scenes and create a unique experience. This is probably his biggest film though, I will be honest, in terms of scale and runtime, because boy, compared to the first movie, I mean, that's peanuts. This is a crazy event type movie. But Ryan Coogler shows that he's up to the task, and honestly guys, give him an Avengers film. Alrighty y'all, so if you remember, I just said I saw this movie in IMAX, right? Well, visually, this film is absolutely stunning, and to me, blows the first one out of the water in this department. I was so impressed with the way that this movie was filmed above surface and below it, because the underwater scenes were mystifying, they were captivating, and it's due in large part to the cinematography here, because for me, the MCU has provided some amazing moments, like in Eternals, where the cinematography was on point, However, in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, it's taken to another level. Autumn Durald Akapau, who actually worked on Loki in the cinematography department, is behind the lens here and is framing some of the most beautifully well done shots in the MCU. I was floored by the way that they were able to film all of the people of Talokan, Namor, and even above the ground, you guys. There were some really beautiful moments, I want to say. And I'm talking all about, yes, that funeral scene, but even then in Jabari Land, we were just given so much of a more intimate experience. That's the word I want to use here, is that it felt more intimate even though this is a big film. And I just love the way everything was framed, set up, and the colors that were played with as well. You have to watch this in IMAX. Now on another technical note here, a huge step up in the CGI was definitely needed because I do feel like it was a little bit weak in the first film, but here it was near perfect. I'm serious. There were only some instances where I could kind of see the CGI wasn't doing too well, you know, sometimes where when Riri Williams was in her suit, it didn't really feel like it flowed as well, and there were some instances where you're underwater and you're seeing Namor speak, and I thought, okay, the CGI is not amazing here, but for the most part, it's great 99% of the time. Okay, last two technical notes, you guys. I want to talk about Ruth E. Carter's costume design because I felt all of the costuming was incredibly unique to the scene, to the location, and to the person. Ruth E. Carter is a legend. We know this, but man, it is incredible to see how she one-ups herself. I didn't even think that could be done because in the first Black Panther, I was blown away. To me, that was some of the best costuming, if not the best costuming in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But in Wakanda Forever, I'm like, how do you get better from that point on? I mean, it was incredible to see how each costume design really did match the tone and theme of the scene. So it just felt like everything was marrying each other perfectly. And then when you allow all of that to play in this world and then you hear the score, I mean, my ears were perking. Ludwig Göransson, get this man an Oscar nomination. I'm completely serious because in the first film, you can tell how distinct and unique the score was. But here, it's incredible to see how he had to challenge himself because not only are you writing a score and producing one for Wakanda, but you're also having to create a unique score for Talokan. Sure, the soundtrack definitely helps, and honestly, I'm a bigger fan of the first film soundtrack, but the songs in Wakanda Forever on their soundtrack kind of blend in and play better in context of the film. The score, though, is just pulse pounding. It allows for... I honestly had anxiety in this film, and it was due in large part to the score. There are scenes where it just feels like the score is lingering in the background, and then hits you over the head with drums, with score vocals. By the way, Thames was working with vocals with Ludwig Göransson, and I thought, yeah, that makes sense because it was so impactful. Alrighty, so after all of those technical notes, which I would definitely give an A+ to, let's get into the acting and the film itself at its core. So while this is an ensemble cast, I do want to kind of touch on the fact that there were some effective cameos. The way that Ryan Coogler was able to write in some cameos here was pretty fun. Now there's one that I absolutely was surprised by. I had no clue. Honestly, I didn't get spoiled by this by social media for this movie at all, which is great, but there is one cameo that I thought, man, I really missed their acting so much in this movie, and it was incredible. And there's a powerful mid-credits scene, so please stick around. I was told there was no post-credits scene, but there might be one in the theatrical version, so that was interesting. But I do believe the mid-credits scene is opening up a doorway for the rest of the MCU. Alrighty guys, so let's tackle the acting and writing for our characters, and I want to start with Namor. And the reason we're starting here is because this film already had established characters like Shuri, and you had Ramonda, and you had so many different characters that we were familiar with, but I was definitely not familiar with Namor the Submariner, a character that honestly I never knew much about in the comics. I just knew he was Marvel's version of Aquaman, or maybe it's the other way around compared to like the dates of when these comics were launched. But man, Namor's origin story was handled very well. There's a lot of exposition, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but I love the fact that they were able to show more often than tell. The designs, the Aztec designs, it was just so beautiful to see everything on full display, and it really made sense. I actually understood the point of view of Namor. Did he have misguided I guess, ways of getting his goals. Yes, you don't necessarily want to kill anyone, right? But at the same time, I understood his frustration and his quarrel with the surface world. So yes, I feel like Ryan Coogler was the perfect person to handle Namor's origin story, and he does it so well here. So we're gonna get into Angela Bassett, who plays Queen Ramonda, and oh my goodness, y'all, she stole the entire show. I'm not even kidding. The first half of this movie was all Angela Bassett. There is just no actor in this movie that has screen presence like her. There's not many actors that top Angela Bassett anyway in terms of screen presence, and I was so impressed by what she was able to pull off. I had chills in some instances, and I thought to myself, she needs to be nominated for Best Supporting Actor. I'm not even kidding you guys. This is a movie that shows us why she is a legend, and it is just incredible to see everything on full display for her and her character. And while we were just talking about Namor, I do want to give Tenoch Huerta his flowers, because man, was it incredible to see how he balanced being sinister and human. It's the scenes with Shuri that gave me a different side of Namor, and I really enjoyed the dynamic approach to this character, who, I'm not gonna lie, still feels kind of villainous, you know what I mean? I know people were saying he's an anti-hero, but no, I'm sorry. I do think that maybe he is willing to compromise, but I don't feel comfortable with maybe what's to come when, you know, it deals with Namor and the people of Talokan, but I actually cannot wait to see him much more in the MCU. He did an incredible job here. I know he's a relatively young actor in the game, but man, I can't wait to see more of him, because every time I see him, he surprises me in the best way. And then there's our leading lady, you guys, Letitia Wright, who plays Princess Shuri, and you know what? She eventually falls into her own in the second half of the film. But in the first half, you can tell that she is not necessarily taking lead all the way through, even though the film frames it like it's going to happen. It just didn't happen until after that midway point in the movie, and I really appreciate the gradual progression of her character, even though there is this theme of vengeance that doesn't necessarily feel like it flowed too naturally for me. Letitia Wright, though, she to me showcased a different element to her game. It's like she just took a step up from the first film, and she proves, at least to me, that she is capable of leading a film like this. And I really loved seeing one of my favorite characters back, Nakia, who's played by Lupita Nyong'o. She was awesome in every scene she was a part of. Even though I felt like they nerfed her character just a little bit, there weren't many moments with her, but the moments we do get with her, I really loved. I really could not even tell you there's anything wrong with the way she acted, and it's nice to see Nakia go on missions. And of course, I do want to talk about Martin Freeman, who plays Agent Ross, and he is mainly there for short periods of time, but I feel it was effective. He's seamlessly able to fit into the flow of the movie. However, he's paired up with someone who I feel like maybe took away from the film a little bit. It kind of added extra runtime where I don't necessarily know if it was necessary, but I do like Martin Freeman quite a bit, and him here is just, it's a good fit, man. He is so darn genuine in his approach to this role, and it bleeds through, especially in that second act. And my last note here is for Dominique Thorne, who plays Riri Williams, and she's getting her own MCU series Ironheart coming soon. She proved to me that she is the perfect fit for this character. I loved her comedic timing. I was a big fan of her delivery when it came to her back and forth with even Danai Gurira and Letitia Wright. It was really cool to see how they were able to go back and forth, and then you think to yourself, at least I thought to myself, Dominique Thorne she's right for this role. And I do think that maybe they could have handled that subplot a little bit better. I almost feel like it kind of took away a little bit in some instances, because you can tell that they were just focusing strictly on her story, even though in the midst of things happening we have another story to tell. But for the most part, it got me excited for Ironheart and the future of Dominique Thorne in the MCU. Okay, I know I said that was the last note, but this is the last note. Danai Gurira as Okoye, I can't tell you she gave a better performance than this one in maybe her career. Oh my goodness, you guys, the pure emotion, the raw energy she was able to deliver just blew me away. Yes, the film does sort of go away from her a little bit, however, in the second half at least. However, I would say for the most part, whenever she's front and center, impact is felt, and I loved it. I just thought it was absolutely incredible. But y'all, that's all the positives that I have for Wakanda Forever. Now I do want to talk about some of the negatives. Now, I don't have many notes. However, I did say in my at a theater reaction that the film isn't perfect, and it's not. No film is perfect, well, for the most part. But I will say that there are some detractors here that keep Wakanda Forever from being a strictly 5 out of 5 type of film. And it begins with the script, which loses itself a bit in the second half. Now, these are the same 2 screenwriters from the first film, Ryan Coogler and Joe Robert Cole, but I feel that maybe they were just jumbling too much. At times I even thought, okay, maybe there are too many characters being introduced here, and it is easy for the audience to get lost, especially if you haven't watched previous Marvel films and TV shows as well. So there are going to be instances where you might not necessarily pick up on what's going on for the average MCU viewer. But for me, I understood everything. I wasn't confused. It's just the humor and the way that certain conversations were being written that took me out of the element just a bit. There's a lot of humor that's written for Dominique Thorne's character, Riri Williams, for example, but I don't necessarily think it was always incredibly effective. It was almost too humorous to the point where this is where I thought, okay, they're catering to that Marvel formula. And of course, in any ensemble film that also has to deal with giving an origin tale to not one but 2 characters, there's going to be a lot of back and forth. So the script in the first film is just much tighter for me, and here there's just a lot of prolonged moments, and I don't necessarily love a lot of the writing for Namor because they gave Tenoch Huerta exposition way too often. He ended up becoming an exposition machine for the first half of the film, and I thought, okay, can we give him another element to play with here? And even though all the technical notes I have for this film are pretty darn near perfect, I thought, okay, the editing is a little janky. And I was hoping that maybe this was only an instance in the first act, hopefully not deeper into the second and third acts, but from start to finish, there's this editing decision where they cut away from important scenes too abruptly, and it feels unnatural. Transitions between scenes most times didn't necessarily flow for me as well, and it's like someone snapped their fingers next to my ears and said, wake up, instead of me just being in this trance from start to finish. So I really kind of wish that they let scenes breathe a little bit, and I'm saying that, you know, of course, knowing this movie's 2 hours and 40 minutes, so I just kind of wish maybe they cut some fat elsewhere and let more important scenes breathe instead of just cutting away really fast. And there were some characters here that I felt were left behind a little bit. M'Baku, who's played by Winston Duke, and even Nakia. I'm actually pretty, I wouldn't say upset about how they handled M'Baku, but guys, he felt too much like a supporting character after the first film made him out to be a very important character to Wakanda. Yes, M'Baku is not going to be the leading man here in this film. I didn't expect that. However, whenever they do focus on him, it feels like it comes and goes very, very quickly. Even the scene in Jabari Land, we barely get moments with him. It's mainly him, you know, fighting and stuff, okay, but I wish we had more time to spend with M'Baku and even Shuri. But when it comes to Nakia, I really kind of hope that they wouldn't regulate her to just being this person they lean on for spy missions, and they kind of do that. If it wasn't for a certain scene in this movie that I won't mention yet because of course it is a spoiler, I would have felt like Nakia is just a plot device. So that's not great. I felt that way for a while in this film, and I just kind of wanted more. Now, there is one character that I have to be careful, I have to dance around this, that I didn't necessarily feel the impact, and that is the new Black Panther. Yeah, I can't really say the name, can I? The new Black Panther here didn't hit for me like I thought it would. There is a cool action scene that involves our new Black Panther, but for the most part, I really thought it was a little underwhelming. I'm serious, and maybe that's because Chadwick Boseman's passing is still kind of fresh, so I'm in my mind equating, you know, King T'Challa in the suit, and I know that this is a new Black Panther, new fighting style, but it never really vibed with me. And we were talking earlier about this theme. There's an overall theme in this movie that sometimes works and most times doesn't. I don't necessarily know if it fit for the character of Black Panther too well, and I can't get into that too much, but I will say that the impact, the weight of this new Black Panther, whenever we get introduced to it never really clicks with me all the way, and that is kind of a problem. I can already hear you guys most likely yelling at me in the comments, but overall, listen, those negatives are not enough to make me say that this movie is bad. It's not. Emotionally, it's on the same level as Infinity War and Endgame. And I know that's a tall task because both of those films had a huge responsibility in wrapping up these arcs, but Black Panther Wakanda Forever is a film that sticks with you long after you see it. There's an emotional weight. I feel like there is a physical impact. I mean, the pulse-pounding score, the incredible direction, the visuals that were stunning, the acting that makes you feel something is why this movie is one of the best of the year. It is without a doubt, top tier MCU film. Now, is it in my top 5? I'll have to see, but I do love this film. I think it is a great experience. It is one of those movies where you do have to see it for the first time in theaters, because if you see it at home, there is really not much of an impact compared to how you see it on the biggest screen possible. And even though the film does hit on most emotional beats, the biggest fault I have with this movie is the writing and the way that they're handling some storylines. It just felt like maybe there was too much going on sometimes, which detracts from the overall effectiveness of the story in the first half of the film. In the second half, it does turn into a less intimate experience, which I get they have to build up to the climax and the big fight. But I was hoping for more of an intimate story because that's where all signs were pointing to in the first hour of this film. It's still an incredibly strong film, and it's one that I cannot wait to watch again and to maybe pick out some things I missed because my eyes were racing. I was just looking all over the screen. There's a lot to digest here, but when you do, I believe you'll be satisfied. So there you have it, y'all. That's my real review of Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Again, it hits theaters November 11th. So when you see it, let me know down below in the comments what you think of this film. Do you agree with me, disagree with me, or do you fall right in the middle? And hey, if you haven't already, hit that big red button below and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more coverage just like this. A big part of me just wants to give Ryan Coogler a hug because the man is just incredible at his craft and he elevated the MCU once again. Seriously, that is a hard thing to do, but he did it, and I'm happy with this film. Alrighty, y'all. Well, again, thanks so much for tuning in and staying with me. This was a fun movie to talk about. However, I need to go decompress because I'm starting to think about that cold open again, and it's pretty emotional. Alrighty, y'all. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening.